In this video, I'm going to introduce the concept of slicers in relation to a table, and then we'll also mess with the subtotal function. And all of this is in regards to creating a dashboard based on our employee data. So my data is already a table, and I can tell that because when I click in it, I get table design. And I'm going to name my table so I can reference it easy on other worksheets. So I've called this table employees. I hit enter. And now we're going to introduce this concept of a slicer. And basically what a slicer is just kind of a graphical way to use these filters. So I will hit insert slicer, and you'll notice there is, I can choose a slicer for any column in the data. I might choose department, so I can slice and dice this data based on department. So if I were to just hit accounting, all of the data is filtered on accounting. If I hold down the control key, I can do accounting and finance. So there's the accounting and finance. If I hold down the control key again, there's accounting, finance, IT. And you can use the shift key. So again, I'll click on accounting, hold down the shift key, and I can grab those three: accounting, administration, and customer support. So it's basically a graphical way to use filters. Now, what we're going to do to create this dashboard is Control X my slicer and run over to dashboard and paste it. And these slicers are have a lot of formatting options. When you select a slicer, it has its own ribbon. So notice it says slicer here, and it has slicer styles, and so you can try to get it to match whatever style your data is currently in, which obviously that's not. But you can size them, whether it needs to be 1 or 2 columns. So let's say you don't want to scroll. I could make this to be a 2-column slicer and move up, but then of course you might be concerned that you're cutting off some of the words. And you can have more than one slicer at a time. So that was the department. Now I want to do office. So running back to my table, I'll go to table design, insert a slicer, and I'll grab, excuse me, office. So there's an office slicer. Control X on that, and I will run it over here and control paste. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time formatting these, but if you take a minute to look through this slicer button, there's not a whole lot you can do. But now, excuse me, if I choose accounting and Denver, and I run over and look at my data, well, now I have the accounting Denver department. So basically, that's how slicers work. You can clear the filters on all of them. Now, there's a function called subtotal. So over here on this dashboard page, let's say I had a whole list of slicers and I could, filter my data based on my selections in those slicers. I would want to see a summary in terms of the number of employees, the total wages, average wage, min, max. Well, there's a function called subtotal, and what it does is it only will do what you ask in terms of average, count, min, or max, but it only does it over the things that are visible. Meaning, if you filtered the data to be Denver accounting, well, the only thing that's visible are the Denver accounting records, and that's what the subtotal will look at. So if I want to count the employees, I'm going to use the 3. That's count A, and remember count A is like any non-blank cell. And here's the other cool thing. Remember, I named that table. So I don't have to run back there to grab the data. I can just start typing the name, EM, and then there's employees. And then with the square bracket, I can then choose a field. And for this, because I'm counting, that was the 3 was counting, I can choose any field that has data in it. And so now I'll do square bracket and then close that up. So there's my subtotal for the employees. Right now I don't have anything filtered, so I have 534 employees. But let's just choose the Denver office. And now I have 116 employees. And now let's choose the accounting office in Denver. I have 9 people in the accounting office in Denver. Well, let's go double check. So if I run over here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are the 9 people. So now I want to total the wages. And so in this case, I'm just going to take the base salary. Not sure what they want for sure, but whatever. Let's just go subtotal. And now what are my choices here? Well, one of them is sum. Number 9 is sum. Oops, that's not 9. So there's 9. And there's my employee table, square bracket, the base salary. So I'm hitting the tab key. square bracket, and close up the subtotal function. So I'm going to do a sum on the base salary, and the subtotal is only going to do those values that are visible. So for those 9 employees, the sum of the wages is $541. If I were to clear these filters, of course, it goes up to $33 million. If I only want to see the accounting department across all of the offices, well, there's 69 employees at $4 million. So yeah, I think you get the idea. If I want to take the average, I'm going to go equals subtotal. I'll substitute sub T, and then I'll hit the tab key. And where's the average function? It is right here. Oh, it's number 1, so I just put a 1, comma. And then what was it? Employees, square bracket, and now I'm going to do the base salary. And I hit the tab key, square bracket, close up the subtotal, and there's the average salary. And then finally, minimum. I won't fill this one all the way out because I think you're getting the idea. Minimum, I'd put a 5 in there. If I want the max, I'd put the 4 in there. But the same thing, whatever column you want to consider wages, whether it's the base salary or this total salary, doesn't really matter. But the point is, it's all based off of your slicer making certain records visible, and the subtotal works on visible records. So that's how that works. The other thing that's kind of cool with tables in particular, so I'm off the subject of subtotal, is let's say I want to do a Vlookup. If somebody were to type in somebody's, I'm just going to control copy that. If for some reason you knew somebody's ID, and then you're wondering, well, who is that? And what department are they in, and what city, and what's their wages? So your user is going to type in this ID, and now I want to return their name. So I can go Vlookup, of course, is the appropriate function, and the thing I'm going to look up is that value. But here's the kind of cool part. All I have to do is type in my table, and that becomes my array. I think the name will be, we'll just return the last name. I'm going to assume that's column 2. And of course, I want an exact match. So if I put that in, I get the fact that 813, 544 is Monica. Yep, that's working. And so then, of course, I could use that same Vlookup. If I absolute that value, I would be able to drag this down because that table is an absolute array. What I have to change each time is the fact that the department is column, and I don't know what it is, column 4. Wow, that was a lucky guess. Column 4, and then we want the city, which would be column, I guess that would be the office, so that's 4, 5, 6. So if I ran in here and made this column 6. So you get the idea on the Vlookup. I won't finish this last one. Obviously, you'd have to figure out what column has the wages and put that in, but it'd be the same Vlookup formula. So that's it. So slicers are kind of handy because it allows somebody less familiar with Excel to graphically choose the data they're interested in, and then your subtotal function will automatically bring back the values based off the user selection. And then, of course, Vlookup becomes a lot easier to use if I can just use the table name for the table array.